Welcome. Thank you for joining us today for another episode of the TE podcast. Today we are joined by the former Deputy Foreign Minister of the Republic of Artsakh, Armine Aleksanyan. Thank you, Armine, for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
And of course, Hago Pipchan, my co-host. I think today, based on what's going on also in the current state of geopolitical affairs, we thought it was very important for you to join us to discuss some of the recent developments, as well as what are some of the realities that Artsakh Armenians are facing right now in Hayastan. So thank you again for joining us. I don't know if Hagop, you wanted to add to that as like a brief introductory statement, but I think that's very critical right now.
No, completely. I agree with you, Tikran. We're at very dangerous and critical times of our history, and I think it was important to bring someone who knows a lot, who's done a lot of work in Artsakh. I myself has worked with Armine, and it's one of those people that it was a joy to work with. One of the things that I think we need to add is that Armine is a member of the Committee for the Protection of the Fundamental Rights of the people of Artsakh, and also a member of the a council member actually of the Artsakh Diocese, and they're doing important work. And I think it's important for our listeners to hear what they're doing and what's the situation at the moment. Thank you, Armina, for coming. Thank you for being with us. I think we should start with
what the committees are doing. Yeah, I think. In a few words, if you could just tell us a little about what both of those committees are currently working on, who are some other faces on it, and yeah.
Yeah, well, as you know, the committee was founded in 2023 in December by the decree of the Artsakh National Assembly in a very hard times actually for Artsakh people, just after the forced deportation of Artsakh Armenians. And it was necessary to make sure that there are different groups that are actually trying to ease the situation of Artsakhs, trying to help them to get adapted to the new environment and then new challenges they're facing currently in Armenia. But it was also important to make sure that the rights of Artsakh people are not forgotten in the international arena. Basically, the committee was tasked to defend the fundamental rights of Artsakh people internationally, externally more rather than internally. That's why a committee was chosen by the members of parliament. Aleksanyan, the former Armenian foreign minister, was appointed as its coordinator, and the group includes members from basically different parts of the world. We wanted to have a more kind of inclusive group whereby everyone could spread the word or fight the fights needed globally, not just in the near neighborhoods. Let's put it, we have a member from the United States, we have a member from Argentina, from Brussels, Artsakh, Armenia. So it's quite kind of inclusive in that sense. And the choice was made not based on the political or party membership or otherwise. Rather, people were chosen based on their professional skills and the experience they had, and each one of them, how he or she could actually affect certain area. Like a lawyer in the States deals mostly with legal issues, people with more contacts at the UN and other places. So it was kind of, the idea was to create a group that is capable of pushing the rights of Artsakh Armenians forward, especially that, unfortunately, it is not currently on the agenda of the current Armenian government.
What are some of the achievements that the committee has already...
Or what they're working on at the moment? What have they worked on since its inception?
Actually, the three main issues that we're currently pushing for, apart from the general human rights issues are the issue of the freeing the Armenian, the release, unconditional release of the Artsakh POWs and hostages, including the Artsakh military and political leadership. Second issue is, of course, making efforts to ensure the collective and dignified return of Artsakh Armenians to Artsakh under international guarantees, because without that, it's not viable. We all know that, and no Artsakh Armenian would go back without such guarantees. It's clear. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been deported in the first place if they were so welcome back there. And the third issue is, of course, the protection of the cultural and historical heritage. Because we can see on the example of Nakhichevan that, unfortunately, when Armenians don't live on their land and Azerbaijan is the state occupying it, you end up losing all the heritage that is there. And we especially put the stress on the fact that the heritage does not belong only to Armenians, but it's the heritage that belongs to humanity, and hence international structures, the specialized agencies, and not only them, should be interested in preserving them, and it's their direct duty to actually have an input in the preservation of those monuments.
And just to add to that, I think just in the last 2 to 3 years, we've seen monuments, churches, and very important sites be destroyed in Artsakh today. So not just, you mentioned Nakhichevan, but I feel like we've seen it
exactly
in real time.
It's happening now as we talk. We cannot exclude the fact that another church is being demolished, because there are a number of churches that have been completely destroyed. One of them is Ganetjan in Shushi. Another is the Zoravor Church in Mekhakavan, which is completely even to the ground, and BBC had reported just after they have actually occupied. And there are many churches that have been desecrated. They were not completely destroyed, but they were partially, the cross was taken out, they went inside and basically did different rituals over there. The cross stones that are, and they put videos actually while they're doing this, which is actually good for us in a sense that we can have evidence of that happening and we can take it to the courts. And I think that regarding the right of return, we can say, of course, as we can see, despite so many movements that are fighting for the release of the Armenian POWs, we don't really see much progress in there. And sham trials are a vivid example of that, that basically Azerbaijan has got away with everything it has done, despite the fact that ICJ had interim measures advising him not to do this or that. This includes also the prisoners, the churches, the free access for Artsakhists to their homes, etc. But of course, Azerbaijan is not following those requests. And it's very important, especially now, that in case Armenia withdraws in the light of the recent developments, withdraws from the cases from international courts, it's important to have alternative cases, individual cases, if you wish, cases brought up by different activists, by NGOs, etc. And there are such groups that are working towards that goal. This includes Armenian lawyers, and not only Armenian lawyers who work pro bono and actually bring up such cases in case both in Armenia and abroad, so that even if Armenia withdraws from those international courts, we can still fight for the rights of Artsakh people in a different format, in a format that is still available to us.
That's very important to know, because just to give some perspective to our followers, Armenia is referencing a so-called peace deal that's been in discussion for quite some time now, with the most recent development being on August 8, where the Prime Minister of Armenia, as well as the dictator of Azerbaijan, was in Washington, D.C. at the White House, where they had a ceremony to agree to reaching peace. Now, part of something Azerbaijan has always pushed for is the withdrawal of all these ICJ decisions on behalf of Armenia, and all these lawyers that work so hard on behalf of the Armenian people to seek justice for Artsakh Armenians. So that I just want to point out that that's what you're referring to when you're talking
And also
about
the OSCE,
withdrawal.
the Minsk group, you know, the dissolution, basically the withdrawal of Armenia and Azerbaijan from that, you know, that basically was created to kind of bring peace in the region and, you know, bring some of the stuff that Armenia has already pointed out. Look, I wanted to go a step back. Okay, when we say collective return, what do we understand? What is the community trying to achieve with that? What's the understanding behind that? Because look, for us that we're heavily involved in all this, we understand exactly what the community is trying to achieve. But for some of our listeners that, you know, they're new to everything that's happening, and a lot of people have brought, you know, that's the reality. So I would like you to go into it a little bit more, explain what it is exactly.
Well, when we say collective return, we mean return of the Artsakh people as a whole. We don't mean the return of 10 or 20 people who gather together, or some third country decides to use those 20 people in order to reach its own goals by putting them in there and creating an image that the right of return is guaranteed. Look at these 20 people, they live peacefully in Artsakh. If you remember the UN office in Azerbaijan, I want to stress this because it was not the UN because the UN office was rejected, was not allowed access to Stepanakert. Instead, Azerbaijan has organized a visit by the UN office in Azerbaijan, who went to Stepanakert just after the forced deportation, and they have registered that there are some 50 people in Karabakh, and there were not even 50, there were less than that, but these were lonely people. I mean, you know it better than I do because you were there, Hakopjan. And these were people who were lonely people and had no one. They couldn't imagine how they will come here, where they will go. They have no one. So they kind of thought that if we have to die, then we better die here.
I mean, it's funny you say that. On the 1st of October in 2023, when, you know, we were trying to take the last people out, you know, help them in the buses and etc., they just showed up. Okay, and they were asking all these sorts of questions, you know, like, why are you leaving? Why are you going? And it was just, you know, it was ridiculous.
This is the UN people from
the UN.
From Azerbaijan.
So, yeah, and it was a gentleman, I believe, from Mauritius, I think. He was asking me all these sorts of questions, and then you had the NSS, you know, the Azeri NSS just standing behind me, and I was the only one speaking English there, so I was like, you're asking me all these questions, and the head of NSS from Shushi had come down.
Yeah.
How am I able to kind of answer all these questions? Excuse me. So I told him, look, if I get to Yerevan, we'll go through all this. So give me your business card, I'll call you, and we'll meet in Yerevan. Excuse me. So it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous because it's all a facade.
Staged.
Yeah.
It was very well planned and staged. The same way that they kind of use journalists. A pool of journalists, they kind of tell them what to do. They take them to certain places to create the image they want to show to the world. And this was exactly the same thing. And most of these people some of them were actually with mental issues. Others had problems with alcohol. Others didn't really realize, I mean, some of them were in shock, I think. They didn't really understand what's happening around them. And they didn't really kind of know what to do, how to do, in a way. Because I don't think that any Karabakhci, any Artsakhi who was there and who had seen all this nearly 10-month blockade that they were subjected to in the worst scenario. Basically, they were doing their living conditions unbearable, which can be equal to genocide, because that's what genocide description is, one of the descriptions, I should say. All of these people, I mean, they know that if they stay, they will get killed. And they have seen their neighbors being beheaded, some of them in the villages. Maybe in the cities, it was differently organized because The peacekeepers were there in the kind of
Main
in the
areas.
outskirts of
Yeah.
the town, kind of trying to keep control of the situation to the level possible. But of course, in the villages, there were fights going on. The young chaps were actually fighting so that the village could be evacuated. Otherwise, they would be killed because the peacekeepers were not just everywhere in every single village. They were on the roads. But if the village is in the forest, you don't really see what is happening there. So it's really, very complex in a way. But all this staging that was done, thank God afterwards came the Freedom House report, which kind of opened the bracket and explained what's happening in reality. And most of these people that were there, not most of them, actually all of them, came back. And one of them actually is being used now, wearing a nice suit in the court, giving actually evidence against the Artsakh POWs and leadership. So they have use for everyone in a way, in that sense. But yes, coming back to the collective returns means Artsakh people who want to go back to their houses, and they have that right by international law. They're indigenous to that territory, and they have all the right to go back to their homes, especially that they left their homes untouched. They didn't really, most of them came only with one bag. In the buses especially, there was not much space, so all they could take were probably memories. Photos, videos, but not really much belongings as such, not even their clothes. And all of them had somehow, when you talk to them, they all thought that they will be returning. That's why they didn't think about taking more from their houses. Let's not forget that this was the second exodus. Prior in 2020, there was an evacuation, and they all knew they would be. So they kind of thought that it cannot happen in the 21st century that they all get out and they have no right or no way of going back. And the way they got out through that breach, I think only Palestinians would understand to what suffering they were subjected to while passing through that breach. So collective return is about ensuring by international norms and laws the collective return, which is a dignified return of these people to their homes under international supervision and under international guarantees. Because without that, it's nonsense. And it's even more nonsense when different peace deals were being discussed, including European Union, the States, etc. And there was you should integrate with Azerbaijan. After so many bloody wars, after so many beheadings, all the reports that you can go and see by human rights defenders and other international organizations, imagine you sending really someone to live with his butcher and saying it's okay, you can live together.
And all part of a continued attempt. I feel like, especially many, the pan-Turkic goal is something we've seen through our history, and you're right, we didn't think we would see it in the 21st century, but the mission of Turkey, Azerbaijan, and the Turkic people has been pretty clear for over a century now. And then the pattern, the systematic nature of it all is
Dikran, they
very
haven't been
clear.
afraid to announce it. They haven't been afraid to announce it and work towards it. If it's something that you have to give it to them, regardless. Look, they're the enemy, but they've put a goal and they work towards it. It's something that we failed to do because we had all that land in Artsakh. We were never able to populate it. So look, when we try and throw blame around, we need to kind of look within as well. That's one of the things. That's one of my philosophies. So let's put that aside, though. I think it's not.
No one is perfect.
So
unfortunately, but you're right. It's very important for us. I think for our future survival, it's more important to be able to look back, to assess what we have done wrong, and try to work on our mistakes. And even look at our neighbors and learn from them, because unfortunately we won the first war, but we didn't solidify it. We're kind of, maybe hesitant, too kind, thinking, okay, if we're left alone, we just want to live on our land. We don't want anything else. This was our understanding, and if we build democracy, if we elect all our governments by popular vote, the world will understand it, etc. We had these naive perceptions of the world, I guess. Or maybe we wanted to have this. I don't think that we were naive.
We're
but
romantics, I think.
We were romantic politically in a way. But I think after the 2016, that romanticism had to
We had to wake up,
cease,
basically.
you know,
yeah.
but it didn't. And we kind of, yeah. But look at what Azerbaijan is doing now.
Mhm.
They're entering our homes. They're calling Armenia their
Yeah.
home. I mean, they've gone that far.
Yeah. Now there's Western Azerbaijan. Now they've taken over parts of Armenia currently, and they're still expanding.
Going forward, yeah, and no one is saying, what the hell are you doing?
Mhm.
And no one is actually bringing counter arguments as to why, when Azerbaijan was talking about the return of Azeri refugees, that they have the right to return to their homes in Armenia,
Mhm.
no one was saying, okay, of course they have the right. But the same way the Baku, Sumgait, Kirovabad Armenians
Yeah.
have the right to
In
return.
the 90s, yeah.
That's one platform. When we're talking about Nagorno-Karabakh, it's a completely different platform.
Completely, I agree.
It was an autonomous republic within Azerbaijan, in fact created by the Bolsheviks. Nowadays, everyone is talking about, getting rid of the legacy of the Bolsheviks. So one of the legacies was the creation of was giving Nagorno-Karabakh to Azerbaijan in one night. So there's no Soviet Union. Nagorno-Karabakh was never part of independent Azerbaijan, not the first Musavatist Azerbaijani Republic, not even the current independent Azerbaijani Republic, because this current republic has announced that it's the hereditary of the first Musavatist.
Mhm.
Hence, it did not really have claims on Karabakh, legally speaking. But today, it's saying, I have taken, it's mine.
Mhm.
Now I want Zangisur, and I want, I'm now in Jermuk, this is also mine. Lake Sevan is Göcha by them,
Mhm.
it's also mine, and we should be there. And we're saying nothing. We're just keeping silent.
I mean, I think your answers to these last few questions were very good, very on point, very well said. My next is, I know you mentioned the committee first was focusing on external affairs, and we talked about how the right of return and how internationally what we should be doing, what we're working on. But now I feel like not just problems and challenges Artsakh may face in Armenia, but Azerbaijan is becoming a problem in Armenia anyways. And among that issue, Artsakhs are facing a series of issues in Armenia. I don't know if it's necessarily something the committee is working on, but if you can talk about some of maybe the challenges that Artsakh Armenians have been facing in Armenia, whether it's the integration or legal status or stuff like that. I feel like that's very important for people to know. Adaptation, sorry, yeah.
I was careful because when Armine said adaptation, because in Artsakh and any Artsakhi, with that word, it's a problematic word, okay, because of how the Azeris were using reintegration. So I think we need to move away from that. Yeah, very
also
sensitive
in a
word.
sense that because Artsakh Armenians really long for return, when you say integration, that means solidification.
No, yeah, like permanently, like
permanently.
you don't want to look back. I get
yeah,
that.
because there is no issue of integrating Armenians with Armenians. It's like we're the same nation. We may have different habits, a bit similar to Sunni Armenians rather than Lori people, etc. But we're there is no such issue as integration among Armenians, and thank God for that. But the issue is the intent you put in that word, whether you want them to integrate permanently or you actually give them a space for choice. Because if they want to return, they may get adopted here, but they all want to return in a way. And we know that it's not going to be soon. Azeris waited 30 years to be able to return. Those who left Karabakh, I'm not talking about the ones that are being now populating Karabakh. But the ones that are there, I think it's, and also I think things were a little bit messed around in a way that Artsakh were not explained properly. When it came to the passport issue, when they first came to Armenia, and they suddenly realized that this passport is only a travel document, it's nothing else.
Which is ridiculous, because it's the same passport. Whoever hasn't seen it, it's just the same Armenian passport. The only difference is there's a 070 code on it, and the Armenian passports, it's at the issuing authority. So the rest of it is just completely the same. It says that the holder is protected by the Armenian government, but here we are that
if you look at it internally, Jakob, and from the point of view of like regular Artsakh person, it's raising a lot of questions. But if you explain why it happened like that and why you should do this or that, for example, one of the things could be, if I'm an Azeri, could be, for example, saying that, okay, Armenian citizens, they have returned back to Armenia. What do you want from us? They're your citizens, you have received them back. Maybe it was kind of a step trying to neutralize that in the future. But internally, I think the job would have been to explain this correctly to the regular people so that they know that this is just
a travel document.
A travel document because because this is the imperative of the time, or this is for the future fights, I don't know. There are ways you can kind of work diligently on it and try to present it, try to do a right packaging if you want. Because even though we're not citizens, Artsakh people can work here, etc. There were these agreements, etc. We all know that.
But previously, Artsakh Armenians could have voted in Armenia.
No, Artsakh Armenians never had the right to vote in Armenia.
Okay.
But they could work
unless
they could legally work.
Came to Armenia, settled here, got an address where they were
registered address. So, but the passport wouldn't change. It would stay with the same. So again, with the 070, but they could vote.
I think
here.
so. The ones who were registered and were kind of. I think so. I'm not kind of. I can't say 100% because I don't know anyone. I just heard about it, but. Yes, I feel it. But Artsakh people would always, even the ones residing in Armenia, would vote for Artsakh if they have residence in Artsakh, of course, registered residence in Artsakh. At the Artsakh representation office, there was always a polling station whereby they would come and vote. So we never really participated in the elections in Armenia because we had our own elections and we participated in the election. That's one of the reasons why Prime Minister of Armenia said that he has no mandate to represent us. We will not dwell into how he represented us in the future, but at least he made it clear that he was not elected by Artsakh people, and as such he cannot represent the Artsakh Armenians.
Tikran, before we move on, I know we need to move on to the current events. Just in a few words, the diocese, the Artsakh diocese, now, they're doing, from what I've seen, there's a youth center, if I'm not mistaken, that's doing great work. What is it doing? What are the council members doing? Because when it comes to the cultural protection, etc., a lot of it is being done by them. I think there was a conference that was being organized or has been organized. Can you tell us a little bit more about the work that's being done and how can it be supported?
Yeah, but before I go into that, I'd like to mention one, not so recent, but actually an event, but an initiative that kicked off in Switzerland after committee worked hardly with the Swiss legislators and the Armenian community there to make sure that there is the Swiss, because they're known as a neutral mediator in many issues, to create a platform kind of for the dialogue between Artsakh Armenians and Azerbaijan. And this resolution was passed in the lower house and then in the upper house. And basically in Switzerland, if this is passed by both chambers, it becomes a must for the government to take the necessary steps. Basically, the foreign minister to do this. And the Swiss were actually working in that direction, and they're also organized another event whereby committee members, a committee was created by the Swiss parliamentarians who want to push forward this issue and fight for it. And there was also a visit of those Swiss committee members together with Aleksanyan to Washington, trying to speak to the US leadership as well, or people close to US leadership, asking for their support to work in that direction. It's especially important because nowadays we see that what's happening to OSCE, the only agreed format that was created specifically for resolving the Nagorno-Karabakh issue. And I think it's important to have a platform whereby this issue is not buried alive, but rather continues to exist, and there's a discourse about it that can bring to a certain end goal that we all want for, basically. Because I think it's important, even though many, Azerbaijan especially, considers this issue closed, not only Azerbaijan, but also those who are actually having a lot of interest in exploiting Azerbaijani resources, gas, oil, etc. And that's why they all wanted this conflict to be quickly resolved, so that the communications could have been opened and they could get what they wanted from the region, in a sense. Sorry to put this bluntly, but that's how it is, unfortunately. We have to make sure that, unfortunately, despite of the current reality, those are issues, the issue of human rights, the issue of Artsakh people, should not be sacrificed for someone else's economic interests. And that they have to do this, cooperate with Azerbaijan, but don't do it at the expense of deporting 145,000 out of their homes. So that's why I think it's important to speak about this, to fight for this, until the time comes whereby there are real circumstances conducive to making it a reality.
And the mechanisms as well, of course, to be able to support this.
As to the diocese, Artsakh Diocese was not dissolved. Thank God, when Artsakh came to Armenia, the diocese was kept, it was kind of maintained, and the diocese chose a council which was tasked with a number of issues. How do we help the Artsakh Armenians, because they're all Christian, they still need to be close to God in the direct sense. Some of them had, many of them, I think all of them have psychological issues, including all of us. Some of them have not even recovered from the trauma and the shock they have gone through. And that's why a number of programs were initiated by the diocese, and sponsors were found for some of them. One of them was Rehabilitation Center for Children that is operating next to Sasunci David metro station, whereby kids go for psychological helps, for speech therapy, for other issues that they need. There are other projects that are about raising awareness about the Artsakh cultural endangered Artsakh cultural heritage and what is happening to them, and what needs to be done to actually protect them internationally. This is the other direction of the work. Of course, also the diocese is publishing a book very soon on all the settlements of Artsakh, village by village, and about the population, about its history, about the cultural and historical sites that existed. I think it's very important to keep this, to walk in that direction, because as we can see, the whole quarter of Stepanakert has been demolished at once. Karintak, Sarkisashen, a number of other villages, Mayramadzor, and many other villages have been completely erased.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to have at least the memory of them, or to have them in digital files, in books, etc., so that we can keep the memory and we have a way of proving that they existed, and they maybe to also use those to prevent others from being demolished.
Yeah.
Because as we can see, Azerbaijan not only aims to completely destroy, but it also appropriates some of our heritage sites.
Mhm.
Take Dadivank.
Mm-hmm.
Azeri president has initiated a working group that was tasked with erasing the Armenian manuscripts from the church and presenting them as Albanian heritage, to which Udi minority of Azerbaijan is presented as a direct hereditary, as you know. So it's working in many different ways, it's building roads, passing through the places, to the sites where a church is standing. I mean, it's done
On purpose.
on purpose. It's not, it's a deliberate destruction of our heritage, nothing else. And I think the fact that the world is silent about this, and the fact that UNESCO cannot, despite of the letters it's writing, etc., it's not allowed access. I think it's important to think about alternative mechanisms, satellite monitoring missions, but not just satellite monitorings, because we already have the Caucasus Heritage Site, the Monuments Watch. There are a few organizations that are actually doing that work.
Yeah.
One way or the other, but it's important to have this satellite monitoring under supervision, under authority of international structure.
I think they're doing it via satellite, aren't
Yeah,
they?
they're doing it via satellite.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you do images, you post it on the Facebook, you write a report about it. For the science and for the history of humanity, it's good.
Yeah, yeah.
But on the ground, you're not really. But if you have a monitoring mechanism that is using international mechanism to actually protect
Record
them and not allow Azerbaijan to destroy them, that's another question, because there's a body you have to report to for destroying that.
Yeah.
But has there been any talks about pilgrimage opportunities? I know right after the 2021, in fact, I even that's how I went to Dadivank. There were maybe a few times where, under the supervision of Russian peacekeepers, a group of Armenians in buses went to Dadivank, where there was surrounded by Azerbaijani servicemen, and there was a wedding there, and there was actually a badarak that took place. I'm sure it's a very big challenge right now, but has there been any talks like that happening? I don't know. Is that a way that, if we do that, it keeps a connection, or we get to be a witness to what's going on? I don't know if there's anything like.
There were actually a few such initiatives, but they didn't take place, because for such initiatives, there were actually initiatives even initiated by churches, church organizations, international church organizations, who wanted to pay pilgrimage to Artsakh just to make sure that those churches are intact. But unfortunately, these ideas were not welcome as such, and they didn't take place. But as you said, while people were there, while Russian peacekeepers were there, it was somehow possible to organize this. Because if you have people who actually go to that site, they worship, they exercise their right to religious freedom, you have a chance that that site will be intact. When you have no one, I mean, look at the other parts of Azerbaijan, whether you can find a cemetery that belonged to Armenia. Any trace of Armenia, any Armenian trace, is going to be erased from there. And that's exactly to prove that Armenians were newcomers, because that was the main narrative. And we have to actually remember that it all starts with a narrative. If your narrative wins, you have all chances to actually protect and pull through the other components of defense. If your narrative fails, then you fail. And unfortunately, we have seen that Azeri narratives were more victorious, because they have pumped more money into it, they involved more specialists into it, and not only that. Unfortunately, we we became peaceful after a certain time. We kind of get accustomed to living a normal life while being between wars. Azerbaijan never stopped thinking about revenge and never has hidden its plan of overtaking Karabakh. And if you look at the Azeri president's website, it's actually saying that if I had to wait for another 17 years, that was just before he left Washington actually, I would have waited and still have taken what I needed by force. And even after after signing the deal in Washington on
the rhetoric.
Sunni, he actually, if you look at the social media, it says Aliyev said, Aliyev did. In Azerbaijan, I just don't want to kind of make this an Azerbaijani podcast. But
and also some of his announcements after the August 8 agreement that was signed.
I got what I wanted. Call it as you wish. I mean, you can use any packaging you want. But the reality, and I'm afraid, unfortunately, that coming from the experience we had when there was a Lachin corridor, and let's not forget that this Zangezur issue, I will not call it a corridor because it's not a corridor and should not be. That's the Azeri narrative that was pushed forward and got there. We have to say today they have got there. And it doesn't matter how to wrap it up, which wrapping paper you use, the reality doesn't change from that. Because initially in the trilateral statement of November 9, 2020, it clearly stated that Armenians should have free access, connecting, free movement through Lachin corridor, and similar road should connect Azerbaijan with Nakhichevan. It all came from there. Now, where are we? We have a completely new concept whereby Lachin corridor doesn't exist. No Armenians are traveling there, but we have the road connecting Azerbaijan to Nakhichevan under international framework, and it starts like that. But what will happen later? The same way we could go to Dadivang in the beginning when it was fresh. It was kind of pilgrimage, everything. Now, can we do that? No. And through time, we may face something else. That's why I think it's important, especially that people are talking about peace deal. There is no peace deal, unfortunately.
Just for our listeners, one of the things Azerbaijan heavily pushes for is the Zangezur route corridor, which connects, which is a road that goes through Sunik. It's maybe around 43 kilometers. It goes through Sunik and to Nakhichevan, which also has a border to Turkey. So it's another way that connects Azerbaijan to Nakhichevan and an attachment border to Turkey. South of Armenia.
South of Armenia, and kind of disconnects Iran from Armenia as well, as a consequence, because nothing has been discussed how the Iranian goods will arrive into Armenia, because where the road is planned, or from the few maps that we've seen, kind of disconnects Iran from the goods to come to Armenia. And I'm quite shocked, to be honest, because Iran hasn't been vocal enough with everything that's happening. But I think that some of the points that we're going to go into.
I just wanted to point out that this is something that benefits Azerbaijan a lot, and that's why they've been advocating for it for a long time, and that's why they've made it a point for it to be part of any finalized peace agreement. When we're referring to the Zangezur road, that now, which we're going to follow up with a few questions regarding the recent peace agreement, now that's being referred to as the TRIP route for international peace and prosperity, is something that I guess the White House now is working towards accomplishing. And the only reason I don't want to get into too detail regarding it, but we all know on August 8th, that, as I mentioned earlier, there was this peace deal that kind of talks about some very important points: delimitation, security, and normalization of relations in the region. It brings up a lot of these different factors, but what I'm more interested on to discuss.
Just a correction: it's not an actual peace deal. What they did was like an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, declaration to so they can build a framework around it. So this was just for the root, and then on that, or they sure, however you want to
four
call it.
different documents actually. The root one was separate. It's kind of considered economically kind of the Trump road. There was a declaration. There was another document on
17-point article document as well too. Yes.
Yeah.
But actually, the peace deal is left for a later stage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
There was no peace agreement signed between the foreign ministers of Armenia and Azerbaijan. And I mean, if we are overly optimistic, I don't know. I mean, of course we all want peace, but we have to understand that peace
Dignified.
has to be not only dignified, but also viable peace, lasting peace. It's not peace. Before drafting a peace deal, you have to make sure that all the components needed for that peace to be lasting are there.
Not under duress, because
Not under duress, of course, because we have seen what happened under duress in Artsakh. When you said you either sign this or you'll be slaughtered, what you do, you kind of save your people.
Yeah, of course.
Physically save your people. Because if they're alive, there's hope that they will come back. If you exterminate them there, just because you're stubborn, it doesn't really help, especially that you know that there's no help coming, that no one is coming to your help, and you have limited resources, and you have exhausted your resources. If you exhaust them more, you will lose more people, but the end result will be the same. So you sometimes have to choose between the worst and the bad. And I think that's what it was. Currently, I think what we're seeing here is, in order to have peace, you really have to have justice for all the parties involved. You get this, I get this, you can give up certain things so that the other side also feels like, it's like it can be win-win, but it can be win-lost. Now I think we have a win-loss situation whereby the Artsakh issue is not included, is not even mentioned. There's no hint about Artsakh in those documents. It's closed, but the saddest thing that it's closed also by Armenian government. And this is something that, I mean, of course we understand that we're maybe in our weakest at this point. But at least you have to try and not give in as much as you can. When you have a peace deal, you have to make sure that at least your territorial integrity is intact. I'm referring to Jermuk, where you have Azerbaijan is standing now. Some parts of Sunni. I mean, forget about Artsakh even. We're talking about what are we gaining, and how viable, how lasting this can be. How we're gonna ensure this. I think in Artsakh we have learned it the hard way, that unless you're ready to defend what you have, you lose it. Doesn't matter what peacekeepers come, be it Russians, be it internationals, it doesn't matter. The day you lose control of your own borders, being controlled by you, by your sovereign defense forces, that's when you put your sovereignty at risk. Maybe not on the paper, but de facto.
Look, now the big winners obviously is Azerbaijan and maybe Turkey. Okay, well, no, maybe certainly Turkey as well. Who are the other winners of this, so-called, MOU or whatever you want to call it?
All of those who have energy deals with Azerbaijan. Europeans, many European countries, some European countries have about 43% of their energy resources from Azerbaijan. Some are less dependent, 10% or 5%, whatever. But of course, the main winners are Azerbaijan and Turkey in a way. But also the West. The West, that this way it can also open the way for others from the kind of south or east connecting the West. Remember that through Artsakh sometimes passed the Silk Road centuries ago. So, I mean, you have to understand those geopolitical realities on the ground. And I think when you were not very strong, maybe militarily, other economically, etc.
Mhm.
You have to act smart, not to be the menu at the table of those who need that territory.
Mhm.
And just to confirm, so these discussions recently did not mention the right of return for Artsakh Armenians. They did not mention the situation with the POWs and hostages. And on top of it, it called for the OSCE and Minsk Group to basically stop existing. And for those that don't know, the OSCE and Minsk Group has been the negotiating body led by the United States, Russia, and France that was mediating the negotiations for decades. And so it was a very important role player in this regard, and they called for it to diminish essentially. So these are some of the important things that I just wanted to confirm that were left out or talked about.
Mhm.
And the other thing I wanted to ask is, now if I were to play devil's advocate and I said hopefully this agreement would stop Azerbaijan from being the way that they've been, violent and always on the offensive, based on your experience in Artsakh's foreign ministry, like how has Azerbaijan's behavior been in past negotiations? Like, what do we actually think that this is going to stop right now? Based
Can we
on
trust them, basically?
Can we trust? Yeah, that's what I want to say. Because on the other side, people may say this agreement will stop Azerbaijan from being on the offense. They'll stop, But how could we be so positive? They were supposed to stop decades ago when the war ended. There was a ceasefire that was signed in 1994 after the first war, but that never stopped them from attacking Artsakh borders, and it never stopped us from having casualties year after year. So
Not only Artsakh borders, don't forget
Armenia,
September.
of course, yes.
I think it's wishful thinking. If you want to switch off your brain and live in the dreamland, maybe that's the attitude you take. By saying this, I don't want. I'm probably a person who wants peace most of all, because in my life I have already seen 4 wars. The last one, the one-day war from outside, unfortunately, in a way, because I was not there. I could not. I did not experience what my family has experienced because I was working abroad at the time. But I think it's important to look at the picture, look at the developments in Azerbaijan. Do we see the change of attitude? Do we really, if we forget about everything and we place ourselves as in a position of someone who wants to believe in peace, okay? Let's play that game. Does Azerbaijan remove the Armenophobia or Armenian hatred from its textbook? Does Azerbaijan cease to type in its textbook, which it introduced after 2020 war, that Armenia is a state that was built on Azeri lands, historical Azeri lands? When you bring up your kids, your children, your younger generation who are the future of your country, with this ideology, when you have a trophy park where Armenians are depicted in the most inhuman ways, when you continue on your social media
day after day,
after day, the same information war against Armenians, when in your country Ramil Safarov, who has asked his sleeping Armenian counterpart,
He's a hero.
is presented as a hero and a role model for Azerbaijani youth. If you think that in this society you have chances, unless you walk towards it, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I just don't see it happening.
For the foreseeable future, as we understand it, and from the evidence, basically, because it's evident.
Yeah, we're seeing the reactions in Azerbaijan. If you go through the Telegram channels, it's all there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's their reactions, and many Azerbaijanis are not happy either with the peace deal they're saying. I don't know whether it's because in that country, unfortunately, everything is staged. for depicting the picture they want to depict.
It reminds us of a different Middle Eastern country that everything is staged and everything is kind of, behind a curtain.
They're the teachers,
Yeah.
they learn
Mhm.
from them, and I think they learn it quite well. And I mean, it's sad. It's really a sad situation whereby we are again 100 years after genocide. We experience another genocide, and we're still in a sort of limbo, not knowing or wishing to believe that Azerbaijan will change in a day and it will want peace. In real politics, things don't happen like that. Unfortunately, you have to walk towards peace.
I only had one more question, unless Hagop has anything else to add. As somebody that's worked with the Artsakh Foreign Ministry and in diplomacy, I'm sure you've had a lot of experience working with different diaspora communities, different Armenian lobbies like the ANC. And I'm only bringing this up because I feel like many people feel very helpless with how they can support Artsakh, how they can support Artsakh Armenians, and any help is big help, or any guidance that you could give, especially in your field, would be very helpful. So you mentioned Switzerland, you mentioned even members of the committee going to Washington DC and doing these type of efforts. What guidance or what form of advice do you have for people maybe interested in what's going on, what they could do, or I don't know, just something like that. That's what I wanted to end with.
Yeah, I think for our closing, we always ask our guests to kind of give their message out. Tell us how they feel the diaspora needs to kind of put their help into everything that we're doing. So please.
Well, I think we should it's really easy to get disappointed and in a way feel helpless. And from time to time, I guess we all experience that, even though, Hagop will know it better because as a diasporan, he's one of the few people that I know that actually gave up their lives abroad. They're more kind of, calm, very fun sometimes life, and came to Artsakh in the time when Artsakh was basically just after the war, and did everything he could in a way. I know a few other diasporans who are actually as much devoted, and when I feel like an apathy and I feel like this is going the wrong way, what is going to happen to us, they're the ones who actually elevate me, because they see it from outside. And one of the things when I first came, and I was really thinking, well, what can I do? Who am I to do anything now? Because I have no control of what is happening, etc. A good friend of ours, whom Hagop also knows, said, well, we should continue the fight, and we should do what we can do today, so that we don't miss the opportunity today, so that the future generations can take over and continue what we started doing. This was a lawyer who is also with us in the committee, Artsakh committee, and actually in January they established an NGO, it's called Armenian Legal Defense Front, who is basically bringing up legal cases, different legal cases against companies who work in Artsakh now, against Azerbaijan for its misdeeds, for the blockade, and many other issues, for the protection of cultural heritage of Artsakh, a number of such cases. And this is something that, you can work with us. And basically they suggested me to become the executive director. And this was something that kind of gave me hope to maybe have still a participation or do what I like doing, and feel like I'm trying to do what can be done today, even though if we don't see the results, the big results, we have small victories. so far, and international law is a field where it takes much longer to get, but we are seeing already results and bringing new cases. So in a way, and what is really great in this thing is that all of our lawyers, they're all working pro bono. None of them is being paid. It's kind of for administrative course, and I think one of the things is we should continue fighting in the legal field, especially that it may happen so. I hope it doesn't happen, but it may happen so that all interstate cases will be withdrawn and will be basically left. I wouldn't accept the situation whereby we close that page as well, because this is the field where we are strong and we can have real victories which can be later used in diplomatic fields, and not only in diplomatic fields, for the benefit of Armenia and the Armenian nation. Because Armenia is our homeland. It may not be my home, because my home is in Artsakh. I am a temporary a refugee. I never thought I would actually use that word, but you don't understand it until you know it. And in a way, I think it's really hard. It's one thing when you say refugee, it's another thing when other diasporan who have grown up on a strange land that became your home for any diasporan, but you also bear the history of your ancestors, your grandma's stories, whatever, how they have left their homes. And I always think that I don't really want to be a grandma telling that story to my kids, to my grandchildren in the future. And if I can do something to prevent that, if I can unite for this, if I need to go and ask for support, I will go and do that. Even in the places where it seems impossible. And I think if we really want, as Armenians, because for me, I was brought up with an idea that Armenia is home and homeland for all Armenians living in the world. Because half of me is from Artsakh, half of my roots go back to Erzurum and Van. So in a way, I am a combination of refugee and, like double.
And refugee.
A refugee, I mean, not a panducht. I never thought that I would, because Artsakh has always been, Artsakhs have never left Artsakh. Besides one short period of history during the Khamsa Melikutsun times, when still some Armenians remained there, but then they returned. But I think it's important that we all understand that this is really a turning point in the Armenian history. And if we really don't want to lose Armenia, and we want to save it, as many savers come and want to save it, we have to be the first ones to save it, because we have responsibility for the future generations, not to, we received Armenia from our ancestors in the form. If we can't make it stronger, at least pass it over to the next generation in the form that we received it, hoping that in the future it will be stronger. And it doesn't have to be even money, it has to be like expertise, like what you are doing. You are raising the issue, talking about topics that are not really talked much officially in this country, which is a sad thing, because I would have never imagined that Artsakh issue will be erased from the agenda. It will be a no-talk topic. I can understand somehow that tactically you can cease to kind of
silence it, if you like.
Silence, yeah. You can silence it temporarily, but to actually solidifies with certain agreements whereby dissolution of OSCE, these are something that are incomprehensible for me, because all my life was walk in that direction, and I cannot say that my life was in vain. I cannot agree to that, and I think no Armenian should agree to that. And of course we all should walk towards peace, but towards genuine peace, not the peace that is idealistic. Peace that can be preserved, maintained, and of course it is important for Armenia to have good neighborly relations with its neighbors. They should be interested in that as much as we are. That is the core in bringing peace, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I certainly don't have anything to
I
add
don't
to
either.
that.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We talked about a lot of important topics like that haven't been really discussed. So I encourage all our followers to follow the work of the committees that we talked about. Make sure to learn the right narrative, learn about Artsakh, learn about the right history, and get involved too. Get involved however you can. And thank you, Armine Can, for giving us your perspective and giving us all this information.
Armine, it's been a pleasure as always. Thank you very much. The things that you pointed out are, what our listeners should know and they should learn. And, I think you should find places where there's reliable information. That, these things need to come out and people need to be aware, especially all Armenians. And if we have any listeners who are not Armenians, this is what's happening in Armenia now. This is what's happening with our people from Artsakh. So you need to be aware. You need to raise awareness. You need to talk to your governments. You need to talk to your people and tell them more about what's happening here in Armenia.